Hi, this is Michaela from Team Retro, where we like retro games, we like roguelikes, and we like the devices that bring them to us. So last week I decided to pull the trigger on the Powkiddy RGB10 Max. And part of the reason I wanted this device is because I looked at ETA Prime's channel and Retro Game Course channel, and I noticed that they were game streaming on this device. And they were doing so using a version of Lineage OS that was designed for the Odroid Go Super, but it also happened to work on this device. So I spent about 3 or 4 days playing around with that build of Lineage OS, and I posted a question to the SBC Gaming subreddit, wondering if there was a way to actually partition the SD card so that you can fit ROMs or you can extend the system file size. And a Reddit user by the name of No Time to Date actually works on these Lineage builds for the RGB and the Odroid Go Super. He actually sent me this build right before he released it. So this video is going to be a short tutorial on how to install Lineage OS on your Powkiddy RGB10 Max. But we're also going to show off some game streaming, and we're going to show off some high-end emulation, PSP, Dreamcast, N64, and NDS. This build of Lineage OS has a lot of potential. I just want to point out that any imperfections or flaws that I experience while working with this operating system is not the fault of those that brought it to the RGB10 Max. You're dealing with a very limited chipset here, but you're also dealing with trying to run apps that are designed for phones on a device that does not have a touchscreen, so you're going to run into issues here and there. That said, I do want to show you what did work, what challenges I did run into, and then you can go from there and decide if this is something that you want to use for your RGB10 Max. Now that we've got the standard disclaimers out of the way, let's dive in and let's get started. So let's go ahead and start with our SD card plugged into our Windows computer, and we're going to use Win32 Disk Imager to install the Lineage IMG. The first thing we're going to do is make sure the device matches the drive letter of our SD card. And then we'll go ahead and click the folder to browse for our IMG file. I will include a link to this file in the description. So here it is in my downloads folder, so I'm going to go ahead and click it, and then we're going to click the rgb10max.img. Let's go ahead and click write. It's going to ask if we want to continue. Let's go ahead and commit. And it's going to take a little bit for the program to write to the SD card. So go ahead and grab a beverage of choice, use the bathroom, and let's come back when it's all done. Now at this point, I took the completed SD card and put it in my RGB10 Max, and automatically it resized and rebooted, and I'm going to show you exactly what that process did in a minute. I apologize for the change in scenery and the change in lighting. My 3-year-old niece was napping in the other room, and I wanted to keep an eye on her, so I taped this in my kitchen. If you look closely enough, you can actually see the crumbs from when she had a snack of goldfish earlier in the day. So here we are at the Lineage setup screen. Now this particular version of Lineage does not have G-apps, so I was not able to download or test some of my paid apps like ATV Launcher Pro, PS Play, and Dead Cells. There is potential for Android gaming and roguelikes on this device. I just haven't figured out how to get my paid apps onto it yet, so once I do, I will post a video on roguelike performance. In the meantime, we're just going to go ahead and speed up this setup video. This is your standard setup fare, where you just set up your network and choose your options for location services and whether you want to help make this version of LineageOS better. Now that we're at the ATV launcher home screen, I just want to show you some buttons that are going to help you navigate this OS. To begin, you have two extra start and select buttons at the top of the unit. The one on the right by the ABXY buttons is your mouse mode toggle. When you are in this mode, the D-pad is your mouse cursor, and the R1 button is your mouse click. And you can hit the mouse toggle button to keep going back and forth between gamepad mode and mouse mode. One more thing that I want to make sure you're aware of before we get into the meat of this operating system is that I'm no longer using the USB Wi-Fi dongle that I used at the beginning of the video because the developers actually put compatibility with the RGB10 Max's built-in Wi-Fi. And NoTime also told me that Bluetooth external controllers should work as well, but I didn't test that in this video. One thing I found very impressive about this build of Lineage is that 32 gigabytes is actually set aside for the operating system, which is a big improvement over the 1 gigabyte that was set aside in the Odroid build. I'm using a 64 gigabyte memory card, and the rest of the memory card size was actually put into a ROMs partition that can be read in Windows. This ROMs partition has Android folders in it, which means there's a lot of potential to be able to run APKs and other things off of this ROMs partition. But for now, we're just going to create a ROMs folder and we're going to put some ROMs on this device for testing purposes. Putting your ROMs on this operating system couldn't be any easier because that partition is built in and can be read by Windows. Now, in order to get the emulators and apps we need, we're going to use a Chrome extension called APK Downloader. This is the same extension I use to put emulators on my Amazon Fire Stick. However, this will not work for paid apps, so we're just going to get the free ones that we need. PS Remote Play, Xbox, Steam Link, PPSSPP, Drastic, Mupin 64 Plus FZ, and a couple others that I'll want to test out in the future. Now that our APKs are downloaded, we're just going to go to the download partition on the ROMs section of the SD card, and we're just going to drag them over. Again, sorry about the lighting, this was still nap time, but we are in the Files app on the device itself, and all you have to do is navigate to the same download folder in the ROMs partition and just click on the apps to install them. You'll get some notifications about the dangers of installing third-party apps, but just go ahead and ignore that and install the apps. Once the apps are installed, we don't need the APK files anymore, so you can go ahead and select them right on the device, and you can delete them to save space. And that's it for the tutorial, so let's go ahead and let's get into some testing. Now, PlayStation Remote Play right off the bat didn't work with the official app. I tried to sign in using the built-in browser, and I just got a web page not available error. So then I tried again using TV browser, and that got me to a sign-in screen, but then once I typed in my Sony account and password, I ended up with an error messages saying that it couldn't connect to the server, so I gave up on trying to stream from my PS4. Likewise, we weren't able to stream from our Xbox console because whenever I tried to open up the Xbox app, it simply crashed. I've never had good luck with official apps for remote play anyways. On any operating system, I've always used third-party apps, so I can't get those at the moment. So let's go ahead and let's try Steam Link next. Now, I got some mixed results with Steam Link. I was able to actually connect to my PC, but I tried to play Skyrim, and here I started a new game, and as soon as I committed to starting a new game, it crashed back to Steam Big Picture mode, so Skyrim was a no-go. However, I tried a less intensive game. This is Castle Crashers Remastered, and I was able to get this to stream, and it looks very good. However, I did have issues with controller input. I couldn't use magic or items. I'm sure I can get that working with some tweaking. But it's gotten harder to map controls in Steam because this is a game that already has controller support. I did check my Switch version of Castle Crashers just to make sure it wasn't me, and the controls worked fine there, so there does need to be some tweaking to actually get this to work properly. But as far as latency and speed, it looks very good. Now, another interesting puzzle that I was able to figure out is running the CEMU emulator to play Wii U games through Steam Link. And this was a royal pain in the butt on the computer end to figure out, especially how to map the controls to the RGB10 Max. But I actually saw this as a puzzle to figure out rather than as a flaw in the operating system. And I have to tell you, once I got everything figured out and I was able to get through my first race in Mario Kart 8 on the RGB10 Max, I was very impressed that I was playing a Wii U game on this device, even though I was streaming it from my computer. Now, I was sitting next to my router when I captured the gameplay footage, but I moved out into the kitchen and the living room, and I still had very good performance. So I think as long as you're in your house, this is something you can definitely do. As long as you are willing to accept the challenge of actually setting up the emulator and getting the shortcuts in Steam Link to work properly. So that's about all the testing I did on game streaming, so let's move on to the high-end emulation. Now, there are a few things that you are going to need to do in Drastic to set it up initially, and your best bet is to plug in a USB mouse. So here I used a USB-C to USB-A adapter and a wired USB mouse to configure this emulator. Now, we can actually change the screen layout by going to Edit Screens and by picking the layout that we want to edit. Then let's go to Resize Screen, and this is where the mouse comes in handy because now we can actually click and we can drag the screen to where we want it. So if you want to take full advantage of the 16:9 screen, turn off Keep Aspect, and then go ahead and drag the screen so that the top screen covers the entirety of the device. Then you can go ahead and click the bottom screen and you can move it and resize it any way you want. You can make it smaller, you can make it a little bigger, and you can actually overlay the two screens. Then make sure you click back, and then under Menu, click Save Global Layout, and this screen setup will be saved for all of your DS games. Now, I'm not a fan of this layout. It actually looks really stretched and part of the top screen was blocked out, but I wanted to show you that you can play like this if you want to. However, because this 5-inch screen is so nice, I actually took the side-by-side setting and all I did was move the two screens so that they were centered, and I found that this was actually the best way to play on this device. The next thing we want to do to get the most out of this device is we want to enable the touch screen for the bottom screen. So let's go ahead and use our USB mouse to go to right stick mode and let's set that to pointer mode. Then let's go up to map special. And we're going to use the mouse to skip most of these. However, we're going to use R2 for screen swap. We're going to use L2 for open menu. And we're going to use R3 for pointer down. Now you can use the right stick to control the stylus, and this makes NDS great on this device running Lineage. And you're gonna find that this is the best way to enjoy old favorites like Chrono Trigger, or if you decide that you want to go through an old DS Pokemon game, this is a great way to do it. The games run at full speed, and you have touchscreen compatibility without a touchscreen, and this is very close to playing on the original system without having the original system. Unfortunately, N64 performance using Mupin 64 Plus FZ was pretty abysmal, even with changing the profile to a fast one. These arcade chips just struggle to emulate N64 very well, so this is more a fault of the hardware than the operating system. You'll probably get better N64 performance out of something like Emulate or RetroOS, so for running it on Lineage, I would say best bet is to not bother. PSP ran as expected using the PPSSPP emulator. 2D games like Mega Man Powered Up ran fine with a 2x resolution and a frame skip of 1. However, when we turned the resolution back down to 1 to attempt God of War, it was very sluggish and definitely unplayable. So as long as you stick to 2D games on PSP, you should be fine. Dreamcast running the Redream emulator also was very sluggish. Even Crazy Taxi, which is one of the easier games to emulate, did not work very well at all under this build of LineageOS. Furthermore, when I got into gameplay, I couldn't get all the controls to work properly, which I think would be fixed if I played around with it more, but because it ran so badly, I just didn't bother. Alright, we've been at it for almost 20 minutes, so let's start to wrap things up. And I just want to briefly summarize what you can do with this operating system and what you are going to struggle with. DS emulation was the best that this operating system had to offer, and even though I didn't test it in this video, a lot of the lower systems should work just fine. NES, SNES, GBA, you should be good to go. Even though PlayStation and Xbox console remote play didn't work, Steam Link has a lot of potential, and if you are willing to accept the challenge of tweaking it and trying to get the controls to work properly, as long as you're in your house, you should have a great time streaming games from Steam Link. Now, granted, this is no Steam Deck, but until next year, we gotta work with what we have. Unfortunately, N64 and Dreamcast are no-goes for this device, but it's not a limitation of the operating system, it's a limitation of the chipset and the hardware. And with a lot of these arcade devices, we just have to accept that there's going to be a mixed bag there. And PSP is hit or miss. You might be able to get some of those 2D games to work fine, but 3D games, especially games like God of War, are going to give you a harder time. And that'll do it for this video. A special thank you to No Time to Date for sending me this build a couple hours early, and thank you to anyone else who helped bring LineageOS to the RGB10 Max. I will link to the Retro Handhelds Discord in the description in case you have any questions or need to report any bugs to those people. And if this video was helpful to you in any way, please be sure to like and subscribe. Until next time, bye for now, and don't stop believing.